All right, today we're going to talk about scatter plots. And scatter plots are a graph that's used to show the relationship between two different sets of data. So if you look at this one, we are comparing somebody's weight to their height. And so you have all these different data points of if somebody weighs 100 pounds and they're 5 foot tall, that gets plotted on there. If somebody's 6 foot tall and weighs 185, that gets plotted on there. Okay, so each of those data points gets plotted. What we're going to look at today is how you turn that into a line that best represents the average of all that data. So you may want to pause and write some of this down, because when I'm doing a line of best fit from the data, first I draw that scatter plot. Second, I'm going to sketch the line that follows the trend of the points. I'm going to show you how to do that today, because there should be about as many above as there are below. And then once you get that line, you're going to choose 2 points so that you can determine the slope. You're also going to determine the y-intercept, because I know that to write the equation of a line, I need the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, let's go through a couple examples. So if I'm looking at this example, this is a table that gives the systolic blood pressure on the Y of patients depending on their age. We're going to come up with the best fitting line for the data. So we said the first thing you do, plot the data. Okay, once I plot the data, here's kind of my secret to getting a good line of best fit. What I do is draw a blob around the data. So then I'm going to draw a line that follows the trend of the blob and has about as many points above as below. Okay, so there you go. My red line has about as many points above as below, and it follows the trend of that blob. Okay, then what I'm doing is picking 2 points, and if I can, I'm picking 2 points that match the grid just to make my life easy. They don't have to be, but it's better. So here's a thing to remember. Once I draw the line, the data points don't matter at all anymore. So I don't need to use any of the data points to get my slope. I don't have to have the line go through any of those points. The points are no longer important. Okay, so if you look at the 2 points where I circled them in blue, I'm going to find the slope by saying I'm going up 80 and over 55. So that's my slope. I'm going to then look over here and determine my y-intercept. So my b value is about 54. And now I can write the equation of the line. Y equals 80 over 55, and I could reduce that, plus 54. And that's my equation. Okay, we're going to do a couple more so that you can see how to do this. If I look at this, okay, so now there's just a set of data so that you can see it stripped down to its easiest information. So I want to draw a scatter plot. What I have done is gotten this ready. Okay, so there's my data. I just plot each of those points, remembering that you plot X first, right? It's a X and a Y. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is draw a blob around my points so that it helps me when I'm drawing a line to follow the trend of the line. Okay, so following the trend of the line, and I have about as many above as below. So I may want to move it down a tiny bit so I've got as many above as below. All right, so now I'm going to look for 2 points. So I'm kind of looking for anything that goes through the grid. So I've got one here, which also happens to be the y-intercept. And then it looks like it's not this red point that I'm circling, but where the line goes through the grid. So here is my slope triangle. So my slope is going from 7 down to 4. So that is -3. And it's going from 0 over to 5. So that's -3/5. My y-intercept is again this first point that I circled. So that's 7. So my equation would be y equals -3/5 x plus 7. Okay, I could, if I wanted to, also change my slope to a decimal, so I could write y equals -0.6 x plus 7. So now we're going to use that line of best fit to be able to figure out, to extrapolate some information. So what is the y value when x equals 32? Well, we're just going to plug in. Y equals -0.6, and my x value is 32 plus 7. If I take a calculator, I'm going to multiply 32 times -0.06, and then add to that 7. So I can find out that this answer is 5.08. My y value, when I know the x, just plug in. All right, so for this last one, if I have a y value of -7, I'm going to plug that in place of y equals -0.6 x plus 7. So I'm going to subtract the 7 and get -14 equals -0.6 x. Then I'm going to divide 14 by -0.06. And I'm going to get that this is -233.3. Okay, so the whole point of getting this line is so that we can use it to figure out other information that is beyond the edges of our graph. All right, one last one. If you look at this, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Just get the data. Okay, so here I have an ice cream sales versus temperature. I'm gonna, before this, just to make it faster, I've plotted all of this data. Okay, so now I have all the data. I'm going to do what I did in the last one. I'm going to take and draw a blob around this. The whole reason for the blob is it really does make it easier when I come in to draw this line to say I am following the trend of the line. If I look at this right now, I've got a whole bunch more points below it. So I'm going to kind of lower that down a little bit. Oh, it's about right. Okay, now I'm looking for 2 points where my line crosses the grid. Well, if you can see, I don't have great lines for that. So what I'm going to do, because they're in kind of the same place, is choose this one and this one because they're both about in the middle, and that's going to be easy for me to tell. So my slope is going to come from this triangle. So I'm going up from 250 right here to 450, so I'm going up 200. I'm going over from 14 to 20, so I'm going over 6. Okay, so this is one of those things I have to be really careful and read the labels on the side, read my scaling. So my slope here is 200 over 6, which I could reduce to 100 over 3. But oftentimes when we're doing this in a graph, it's going to be easier to list this as an approximate 33.3. Okay, my B value is going to come from estimating where I'm at right there. So I'm above 100. I'm going to say that's about 150 would be in the middle. So I'm going to say I'm about 115. So the equation of my line is y equals 33.3x plus 115. So let's write that down, 33.x plus 115. And can we make a prediction of the amount sold if the temperature is 21 degrees? Well, all I'm going to do is temperature is x, so I'm going to say y equals 33.3, put in 21 for x plus 115. If I use my calculator, I'm going to have 814.3. If you think about this, this is sales, right? So that is a dollar amount. All right, so work on the homework to try and see if you understand this.